Agnes Eleanor Gardner was the daughter of James and Hannah. She married Henry Howard Hughes, and I tell a story about Henry Howard Hughes's father, why he was in Wales of the United Kingdom, mining as a child, where he was stuck in a mine with several men that got flooded, and quite a story. But I do have that up on YouTube. If you would go to the YouTube channel that you're listening to on, you will find that story. Many of the stories I've read and saved and put into my books are just the everyday life of everyday people. Leslie Cotterill was one of them. Leslie had married Mary Marine Bird, who was the daughter of Hannah Wiley, and who was the daughter of Mary Ann, and of course the daughter of James and Hannah. Their story has some interesting things in it. Les, when he was 12 years old, he became skilled with handling farm animals, and especially horses. He worked as a derrick boy and helped with the stock. He was taught to use a bullwhip by his grandfather Joseph, who was a bullwhacker for Brigham Young. Because of his ability to manage animals, Les was offered a job with the stock association herding cattle when he was only 13. This experience with animals led Les to the rodeo. He rode horses and participated in many events, and he loved the rodeo and became an accomplished cowboy. However, one spring night while attending a dance, he met the pretty young girl, Mary Bird, and he took her on the back of his motorcycle on July 11th, and they drove all the way to from St. Anthony to Rexburg to be married in the county courthouse. And they started their life together in a single-room apartment. Les worked on the farm, and Mary sorted peas and cared for Villa Cotterill, Les's mother, who had suffered a stroke at a young age. They had a hard time farming due to lack of water and had to leave the farms. Prior to the Depression, Les worked for Harry Plessinger as a mechanic on some of the first automobiles in the area. Even though he was off the farm, he loved animals. He took a bunch of maverick dogs that nobody else could train, and he made them into one of the finest sled dog teams in the West, taking third out of the 18 teams in the American Dog Derby held in Ashton in 1927. Famous dog derby that's held in Ashton every year, and he did well. Just a fun story. My next story is Artella Ward. A couple stories are fun with her. She married Norval, who was the daughter of Meddy, who was the daughter of Agnes, who was the daughter of James and Hannah. At the farm in Newdale, Artella can remember her father raising a crop of third crop hay. Now, since this was a good year and there was a third crop, he told Artella and her sister Irma and Zeke if they would mow and rake and haul this hay, they could sell it and have the money. It took all of them to handle the machinery to do the job. One drove the team, the two others sat on the mower to raise and lower the blade. The same with the dump rake. The dump rake had long tines and had to be raised and lowered. They took their load of hay down to the men building the railroad in Newdale and asked them if they wanted to buy the hay for their horses. As soon as they got there with their hay, the men tied their horses to the wagon, and their horses started to eat the hay. The hay had not been weighed or paid for. The kids were disappointed and went home to tell their dad. He went to talk to the man in charge. The man started to smart mouth Wilford, so he doubled up his fist, hit the man, and finally gave Wilford $20 for the hay so he could give it to the kids. That was a lot of money in those days. Artella also can remember when her father bought his first car. He went to Rexburg and bought a car from a salesman. He didn't know how to drive a car, so he told the salesman he would take it if he would drive it out of town for him and explain how to drive it. He got home with the car. He would take the car out in the field to practice driving until he became a good driver. However, he didn't take the car to the farm when he went because it didn't go up hills very well. Back in those days, the gas was fed into cars by a gravity flow. So the car go up a steep hill going backwards, but not forwards, because of the slope of the hill would cause that many jobs are very hard. This story is from Arthur, who was the son of Mary, who was the son of Mary, who was the son of James and Hannah. He began working for Weber County in about 1941 and worked for them except for a short time when he worked for the Ogden Arsenal until he retired. He worked for the Weber County and plowed snow in Huntsville, Eden, and Liberty area by Pineview Dam for a number of winters. Once, when he didn't show up when he should have, they went to find him. He was buried in a snowplow truck under an avalanche of snow across the road in Ogden Canyon. He drove trucks and worked on state and county roads many, many years. Anyway, after driving trucks for years, he and Lee Rigby worked on the drag line west of Ogden, cleaning out ditches. When Lee retired, Art worked with Lewis Greenwell. When winter came or the drag line broke down, they were placed elsewhere to work. He had a number of accidents. One of his very serious accidents was the drag line bucket slipped and hit him on the shoulder, breaking 4 ribs. One rib punctured his right lung and pushed his heart over. He was knocked into the main ditch, and in the muddy water was up to his armpits before they could get him out. A neighbor boy in the area was watching and ran to phone for help while Lee stayed with Art. He wasn't expected to live and was in the hospital in intensive care for 7 days and then the hospital for a long while. Here are some short stories. I met Mariana to get acquainted dancing at BYU in September 1959. Jerry went on and said she had danced with my twin brother Jim earlier, and when I danced with her, she thought it was strange that I asked some of the same questions over again. I could tell she was puzzled, so after the dance was over, I took her over to meet Jim, not knowing that she had already danced with them. Then the mystery was cleared. We danced several nights that night and had a good time. They later married, but just an interesting story of being a twin, one of the problems you could run into. Another story is Robert Gillis. He was born under the name of Robert Smith to the parents of Clarence A. Smith and Ada M. Smith. He said, when my parents and older brother moved to Idaho, my father took up his real name, which was Charles O. Gillis. My brother, who was also born as Howard Charles Smith, named Charles Howard Gillis when Dad took up his real name again and when we moved back to Idaho. He and Mother had lied under the name of Smith for almost 10 years in Wyoming and Colorado. Dad ran a dude ranch. He had his own blacksmith shop and an auto shop and was a notary public and was in the state of Colorado Highway Board, all while under the name of Clarence Smith. Quite a story that they've lived. They left Idaho 10 years, changed the name, and then they come back and changed it, and they never even told their children until they came back. Here's a story about Lola. These are from her notes. In August of 1951, Lola got off a few days off to go to girls' camp at Darby Canyon with her MIA class. Part of the camp activities was to go on an all-day hike to the Wind and Ice Caves. They had just come out of the caves. A storm came up. The lightning hit the top of the cave. A leader told them to get away from there. They ran down to a grove of trees. They told them to get out from under the trees when lightning struck the trees. All the girls were knocked unconscious except 2 girls that were a distance away. A second bolt hit. Leaders ran to help them. When Lola came to, she was knocked out from the lightning. She helped some of the girls. A survey was taken, and there was 4 girls and 1 leader who were dead. Even though this was a tragedy, she tells about the strong spirit that was there helping them. Quite a story that you ought to look up and read. Many are familiar with the Teton Dam breaking. David Benson is a cousin of ours, and he actually he was one of the few that was killed in the break. But this story is told mainly from his friend that was with him. So on Saturday, June 5th, 1976, wasn't a very great day for fishing on the Teton River. Darrell Grigg and his friend David Benson made it to the river from their homes in St. Anthony about 11 a.m. They had good luck fishing on a big eddy at the end of an access road in the pass, but that day nothing was biting. So they set out for an island upriver a bit. The anglers had just gotten to the island when they spotted an airplane flying down through the canyon above them. They were close enough to see the pilot, and he seemed to be waving at them, so they waved back. The young men, Darrell was 22, David 23, and they started fishing again when the water rapidly rose to about 6 feet. Benson said, "We'll have to swim out of here." Grigg turned and looked upriver to see a 30-foot high wall of water coming straight at them. He yelled for Benson to jump and start swimming. He said, "We started swimming, but that didn't work." Grigg said in 1977 in an oral history recorded for Utah State University, Ricks College, and Idaho State Historical Society, he said this: "That was the last time I saw David. There were thousands of logs, so I grabbed onto one of them. I didn't have to swim after that. I just remembered looking around. It was unbelievable. Everything was tearing up everything else. I could hardly hear anything because of the noise. Then I saw a couple houses get wiped out." Grigg had no way of knowing that the Teton Dam, which had just finished filling for the first time, had washed out, and one side of it collapsed. He rolled the debris downstream, getting crushed by logs about 3 miles before hanging up on a tree. He was able to work his way into the tree and climb above the roaring water. If I remember right, he had a couple of ribs broken and so forth, and was in the tree several hours before they came to his rescue. Horrible event. David didn't make it, but Grigg went around, and Daryl Grigg went around and talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people have heard his story. 3 more stories I found that were fun. Laura Eliza Gardner was very famous for her food. And anyway, her cakes were never cut before being served. Each person cut the amount they wanted as it was passed around. I love that idea. You can take as much as you want. Frederick James Gardner, while working near Spencer in Beaver Canyon, John's brother Fred was attacked by a bear and his chest was badly chewed. Another man shot the bear after Fred had already shot it in the heart, and he was miraculously saved. Found quite a few bear stories, maulings. Kind of amazed at how wild it was back there in Idaho. Elv Mace wrote, "When Eva got married, a bunch of us from Teton decided to go along on their honeymoon. Evelyn and Joy White lent the cabin at West Yellowstone, so Della, Laverne, and I decided that when we got to West Yellowstone, we would jump in bed and stay there because we didn't want to sleep in the tent with all the boys. During the night, the marshal told them if they didn't quiet down, they would be run out of town. Then up in the park, a bear came along, and Lester and Jess Atkins were feeding it. Lester told Jess to pet it. Well, he did, and it tore his pant leg wide open. And it just happened to be on the leg that was wooden." Irvin tells this story. "He told me about the time he went up. He and another man was up in the timber getting wood. A bear came to camp and took the bacon, so they were hunting the bear. Grandfather Gardner ran onto him first and took a shot at him, only wounding him, and the bear came after him and was on top of him when the other men came and shot and killed him. Grandfather was scratched up pretty bad, but survived. Grandma saved the shirt he was wearing. It was all torn and bloodstained, and she kept it for a very long time to show everybody." Frederick told the story. "On the way back, we saw a big squirrel. Fred's grandmother was a great one for having pets, so Fred decided he wanted to get that squirrel and take it to his grandmother. So he carried out water from the creek in his hats and poured it down the squirrel's hole, and then it came out and we grabbed it. It didn't seem to want to bite or fight, so Fred let it crawl up his shirt sleeve. When it got up there a ways, it started chewing on his arm. Fred started hopping around yelling, 'It bit him!' He squeezed it so hard to keep it from biting him, and he crushed it to death."